Okay, ladies and gentlemen, listeners, friends and colleagues, welcome again. We've got another episode of the podcast. And on this particular episode, we've got a gentleman that I've known for a long time, a lot of admiration and respect for him. He's one of the best I've ever experienced. And his name is Vangelis Demosthenous. Okay, and he's the MD of Kratis, and their head office is in Cyprus. So he's joining us today from Cyprus. So Vangelis, lovely to have you on.
Nice to have you, my friend.
It's lovely, really nice to see you. Now, Vangelis, before we kick off, can you just tell people a little bit about yourself and the company?
Okay, my background is aviation maintenance, where I worked for 20 years. I have also, for the local airline, I have also received a master's degree in safety management. And for the last 15 years, I have this company, is called Kratis, and the business is mostly on training and consulting. We have been working with various organizations from around the world, and we are specialized in human in the system and safety and similar topics that deal with the human contribution to the system.
Brilliant, brilliant. And I remember when I first met you back in, I'm trying to think now when it was, but it was when I was with Etihad. So it's probably back in 2009, 2010.
Yes, 2010.
Yeah, yeah, great time. I remember that. And I remember what a difference the SMS made to everything that we were doing there in Etihad. It was an excellent time. Now, Vangelis, obviously we're going through some strange times now. And one of the things, which is one of the reasons why I wanted you on, was when you look at what's happened to governments and to countries, it's a bit like companies. And you and me have spoken several times about the difficulties in getting people to be motivated to understand risk and continuity, and especially around the safety side of things. So it's not surprising to me now how many surprises everybody is seeing and has experienced. What's your take on that?
From the experience we had with companies in a smaller scale is the crisis management approach that the companies need to have. And the companies who had a better crisis management approach are the companies who have already been through an accident or a similar type of crisis. So it is natural that unless we go through a crisis, we don't end up looking and predicting and trying to deal with a possible crisis. And I can understand this. We are more or less relaxed unless the regulation is there to force us, but even if it is there, we may not do it in the right way. So it seems that many times we need this crisis to start thinking and preparing for that. And it seems that this big crisis find all the countries unprepared.
Yes, yeah, and I mean it's so difficult for all the politicians and governments and everybody involved. So the last thing is to be negative about what people are doing. It's just that I think in the new normal, because there will be a new normal as we come out of this, until there's a vaccine, there's going to be an awful lot of reflection on what should have been done, could have been done, why was it not done, and it's going to make a lot of difference to the way C-suite and leaders look at their own organisations with regard to continuity, risk, and emergency response. Do you agree with that?
Of course, of course.
And then once they start to look at it, they've got to take it seriously and then do something different about it. Now, in your experience of dealing with companies and trying to motivate the managers to take it on board, what do you think have been the biggest obstacles?
Well, the management has a lot of pressure to deliver the operation, to deliver outcomes of the organization. And sometimes they consider the management of risk or the management of crisis as a job of someone else. the safety department or whatever department they have to deal with that. But it seems that, but unless they understand and they realize that is part of the main duties also to manage the risk, it's difficult to succeed as an organization in actually dealing with the risk. So this is vital that the organizations and the senior management of the organizations take an active role in managing the risk. And this is, unfortunately, is not happening in most of the cases.
Exactly. And also, do you think that, you know, there's such a pressure, and it's going to be even more now with the financial side of the impact from the crisis. There's such a pressure for people to focus on, you know, bottom line and P&L and revenues, that they sometimes put those other areas to one side.
Yes, and this is obvious, and this is happening in most of the cases. Many times the management has a short-term contract, so they try to implement what they can in order to improve the financial situation of the organization. Whereas in the long term, they should also be looking at other things like quality, safety, security, and it's not all. We don't need the regulation. We shouldn't be needing the regulations to implement this system in an effective way. Yeah. And unfortunately, this is the case.
Yeah, no, I agree. It shouldn't require regulatory influence or pressures, but that's normally the only way that things happen. Now, with that in mind, and with lessons learned from the governments, and they hopefully will come together in the future, they're going to have to put certain legislation or codes of practice into place until such time as a vaccine is found.
Yes. I have to say that there is a lot of being said about the day after, what will happen. And there are a lot of tragic scenarios that put in place. Of course, because we have not reached close to the end of this crisis, it's very hard to predict.
Yeah.
But I personally want to be more optimistic than pessimistic about it. I believe human power and human capabilities have proven again and again that they can survive and they can find ways to deal with a different crisis. And I'm sure that we can see some surprises after the day after. You know, we can see a lot of the industries have a quick recovery from that. Even aviation, that is possibly in one of the most critically affected industries, I believe that sooner or later they will find a way to deal with that.
Please God, yeah. And like you said, one of the things when there's too much of the unknown, it's always good to stay positive. Otherwise it drags you down as well. So, you know, that's a message for everybody. Now, training. Now, with people being laid off for so long, and obviously they focus on so many things. And we were talking just before going live about all the maintenance that we're doing around the houses and tidying up and organising and doing things that we never did before. When the new normal comes and there's a rapid ramp up, it's important that people are familiar with the real key issues. And obviously, safety management is at everybody's got everybody's attention at the moment. Now, how do you think companies are going to be able to ramp up and make sure that people are really, really focused on those safety issues?
The companies need to start from now thinking about what will happen when they start the operation. It will be too late when they push the button to expect everything to run normally. So they should make plans on how they will achieve the day that they start operation. And I'm sure a lot of companies are doing that, but they have to do it in a very organized way. Of course, what you predict today may not be the same when something happens in 2 months from now, but you need to start thinking about it, and you need to start preparing. And because at that time, we will be giving a lot of attention to operations,
Yeah.
and this attention to operations may overshadow the required attention to safety and other areas. Then, so we need to start from now looking at these areas. How are we going to manage the people issues that we find, the safety issues that we will be facing, because it will be too late if we leave it at that time. So things like preparing our people to, when the time comes to put the operation into to start the engines of the operation, we need to do it now.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think everybody realizes now, if you think that you need to prepare, you're probably a little bit too late in preparing. So it needs to be done so much quicker. Now, another area that we've spoken about in the past is human factor and issues on people and surroundings and all the different environment and everything. Now, when people come back from this, I would expect there's going to be an awful lot of anxiety, and people are going to they're going to want to talk to their colleagues, to people, what happened to them, how have they been affected, it's going to be a real difficult thing for people to come back in and get straight back into their old positions or work, etc. Now, how do you think that could be better managed?
Well, I think there is only one word to that, and this is communication and preparation, of course, but mainly communication. The communication needs to be continuous from now until the day we start.
Yeah.
We should not miss the opportunities to communicate and keep the communication between the members of our staff now.
Yeah.
And with this communication, this discussion, we get better prepared. We be more, we have to share the thoughts, and it will not be too late when the day comes. We will all share the same way of thinking. We will dissipate a lot of our anxiety. We will talk about these days, and we will definitely have a lot of all the possible risks in front of us and deal with them before we start the operation.
Yeah. And it's such a fundamental pillar of success or sustainability to actually prepare. But it's like most things. Probably the most productive week of anybody's life is the week before you go on your holidays, because you get everything done really quickly before you go. And it's the same in business. You do what comes in, and the things that you don't think will ever happen, you always put to one side. Now,
from the day we have the crisis, and the day which was late March, that the operation in the office stopped, or the office closed, actually, the premises. We have been every day, we have twice a day, we have a meeting with the staff. So all of us, twice a day, at 9 o'clock in the morning and 1 o'clock after midday, we have a meeting. And through a web application, so we see each other, we joke each other, we talk to each other, and we keep ourselves busy by doing some things that they will prepare us. So when we start our operation, our normal operation, we'll be fully prepared. This is not a big philosophy to understand this. Yes, keep their communication going, interchange ideas. So even if you don't have specific work that you can do, keep this communication going on. Even on your team level. If you're a supervisor of a team, come close together, talk to your team. And don't leave this until a month afterwards to do this.
Yeah. No. It's so important, and it's easy to let slip, because people aren't used to the fact that then suddenly you know, there's a lockdown, people have to go home, they work from home, very few come to the office, and those that do, you know, whether, depending which country they're in, they either need a permit or a letter or authority or whatever. So it's very difficult.
Yeah.
Very, very difficult. Now, as far as training and yourself, lots of training and licenses, etc., will fall out of the normal loop, or the you know, the retakes, etc. What are you doing specifically to help companies with that?
We have been preparing ourselves to deal with distance learning. I think this is inevitable, that a lot of the classroom training, it will move, or it has moved to a distance learning format. Yeah, I mean, universities around the world are doing the same thing, but also we have started working with a lot of our clients and delivering some of the training that used to be in classroom. We deliver it in a distance learning format, because we need to be, again, prepared. We need to ensure that the people are up to standard. And we need also to take advantage of this period to invest in learning. You know, even if you do it by yourself or through an online training, it's a good period to do that. I know that is because we are sitting in houses and we possibly don't have many things to do. We're getting possibly a little bit lazy, but what we have to do is to try to find ways to keep ourselves occupied. And this communication with our team and with our teammates and with our organization, this will keep us. This will give us the willingness to work and the willingness to learn and to make most of these days.
Yeah, no, it really is important. It really is important. Now, I've been on one of your online training seminars, which was really good. One thing that, well, again, something that I brought up and I asked you is there's a lot of online learning, but the actual depth and benefit of the training is very different from classroom, where as the teacher, you can see people's eyes, you can see if they understand, you can, you know, you see from the level of question and etc. So it's a lot more difficult online. Now, one of the things I think is hugely important is that when it does come back on, there should be some sort of follow-up, whether it's verification or validation of competence. So within a certain period, companies should welcome either the trainers or the companies that are doing the online training to do an on-site verification of capability and competence. Do you agree with that, or do you think just by having the attendance is good enough?
Okay. Can I ask the first item that you mentioned about the quality of the online training?
Yeah.
I agree with you that it can make a huge difference. We have, possibly as a world, we have not been using, at least outside the academic world, the online training was not a very, the most popular, if I may say, way of delivering training. But since now is becoming one of the, at least these days, the most popular way, then we need somehow to develop some standards.
Yeah.
And these standards are not there. There are examples there, of course, from the universities, but we also, as an industry, aviation, whatever industry, we need to put some standards down. And because, as you said, there are basic elements that can add to the effectiveness of the training. So it's very different when the online training is just a PowerPoint and you have to read it, to have a live training where the training interacts with the attendees and make sure that they understand, make sure that they actually give them enough time to think, enough time to find the good answers themselves. So this kind of webinars and this kind of elements, they can really achieve most of the things that we could achieve in the classroom. So yes, if we follow some standards, if we try to invest and put our creative minds in place, then we can create something that is effective and is welcoming to the people. Otherwise, we may end up with something that is totally useless, and it's very easy to end up with this.
Yeah, just by doing something for the sake of doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, the other thing is, as you said, the verification. It's true that is one thing that you attend the training. It's another thing that you achieve the competencies required.
Correct.
Now, the usual thing that we do to verify the competencies is an exam at the end of any training, which is, of course, is good and it's important to have it. It's a legal evidence that somebody did not only attended, but he also managed to understand the content of the training and so on. Now, there is more into competency. It's not only the knowledge that you acquire during the training. Of course, we may have other things like skills, which the skills take a lot more to be verified, to be examined, to be assessed in an effective way. And then is the actual competency. The competency is a combination of knowledge, skills, and also attitudes.
Yeah.
And the actual competency can be verified at the workplace through different other means. So this verification, in most of the cases, needs to be done on site at the workplace.
Yeah.
Of course, it's not always easy to do that, but if we want to be effective and if we want to be truly correct in assessing competency, they have to be done at the workplace. Otherwise, we can assess from distance the knowledge and the skills sometimes, depending on what skills are we talking about. So there are a few things that, yes, we can verify and we can check from a distance.
Yeah, and what my thoughts are, Vangelis, is that as people now, because of what's happened and because of the capability of some of the online vehicles, that there'll be an awful lot more training because it's a lot more flexible. So you don't have to take so many people out of the workplace, etc., travel, hotels, etc. But I think there'll be a shift from so much classroom training to having, like I agree with you, that there have to be standards of online training, but the shift will be less of the in classroom, but more of the verification and validation of, as you said, the knowledge, the competencies, and truly, truly important is the attitude and the engagement of the individuals. Yeah. And I think that it's going to be a lot more competency based and a lot more verification and validation wise from quality trainers who are able to coach and just bring it across in a very, very different way. Because too many people can pass exams in a classroom, too many people can just attend and have a certificate, but when it comes down to doing the actual work, you really need engaged and correct, focused mindset from people.
This is a usual question for training that has been there for many years. So the question is not how much they get during the class, is how much of it is applied to the organization and how much of it is actually benefiting the organization. And what is the sustainability of this learning?
Yeah.
And this is it's not only for distance learning, but it's for any learning. And we usually fail to do this verification, as you said. We offer a lot of training. Companies are investing a lot in training their personnel, but they don't invest as much in verifying how this training affected the organization or how this training is affecting the organization.
Yeah, yeah,
And this is I hope that sometime, and because possibly now with the difficulties that the industry is facing, maybe they will invest in doing this, and it can make the training more effective, because you aiming for you tend to, if you have a good verification process, a good validation process, it will at the end of the day, it will make the performance of the training, it will drive the performance of the training towards this direction, that we offer training that is not only for academic reasons or
yeah,
any other knowledge reasons. This is to improve the performance of the organization, away from academic education, which is totally different. We're
yes,
talking
yes,
about the training in organizations.
yeah.
So
No,
this should be aiming to improve competencies of the people and performance improvement.
yeah, no, 100%. And I think again, something that will change, and it has to change, is that you don't commit to a training budget because of regulatory demands. Obviously, you have to do it if it's regulated that you must do it, but you should be doing it because it's bringing you a benefit of the organization and sustainability, agility, succession, all of those areas that are so important. And all of those areas require competency based, not just sitting and going through a test or a period of time in a classroom.
Yeah.
Now, another problem that I've seen from some of the courses I've given as well recently is the retention levels of people in the training. And because of these damn things, there's too much information, sometimes incorrect information, and people just can't live away from them. So I'm going to be very curious as to see how this whole episode of people in lockdown, how it's going to affect the reliance on this when it comes out. Now, as a trainer yourself, it must be one of the most frustrating things you've ever experienced when people keep looking at their phones or getting up and going out on their phones during a training session. And the amount of time that people can focus is reducing and reducing and reducing. I think it's probably around 20 minutes now.
You are absolutely right. And the things are going to be even more, whereas I've been more into this direction in the future. I believe more and more people will be distracted by the phones. It's something that we have to take into consideration and continuously find techniques to deal with it in the classroom. And if I can tell you a couple of techniques today, and they may work today, maybe tomorrow they won't work. Things are changing, and the new generation will be even more challenging. And I don't blame them for that, because this is the way they were brought up. This is how the technology is moving us. So we have to find ways, and we need to continuously find ways. And also we need to make the training interesting. We need to make, it's our duty as trainers and training institutions to find ways to keep the attention high.
Yeah.
Of course, the attention level depends on many things, and we need to address all these things.
Yeah.
To achieve as much as success as possible. We cannot be 100% successful, but yes, we need to try.
Yeah, and that's why I think with the mobile apps and the phones, things will be in much smaller sound bites and much smaller amounts, so that there's the flexibility of when to use it, when to access it, to repeat it, to follow up on it, etc. But I think the success will only come with the verification and validation, so that people understand that either their progress or their security in positions will only rely on the level of capability, competence, engagement, and attitude that's put into the work that they carry out. Then there'll be a little bit more focus, and then I don't think it matters how you learn.
Yeah. And if you say the mobile these days can be a very good tool for learning, and we shouldn't underestimate the importance of the mobile application and the application of in the learning process. So we can utilize the willingness of the people to play with their phones all the time to improve their learning. So, as you said, short bits of learning can possibly be one of the ways to deal with the technology in future.
Yeah, yeah. Something that happens to everybody, and I'm not sure how things are going to change now moving forward, but too many industries and sectors within those industries, and then competition within those industries, they spend so much time fighting over the slice instead of growing the cake. And whether it's because they're too competitive or there's too many options or whatever, I'm not sure, but I would imagine, or I think that will change also perhaps in the future.
I think that we will be facing a lot of surprises in the future with the, with the industry and how we knew things. Not necessarily worse though. So a lot of things will be changing. A lot of, and hopefully we can improve in the way we prioritize things in life.
Yes.
You know,
yes,
instead of competing to each other, if we put more into cooperating with each other, I'm sure we find a better result for everybody. And this goes from a small organization to countries. You know,
yeah.
Imagine if there were no wars. Imagine all the spending that we spent in
100%.
all the wars. All of this, if we invested in other areas on how to fight the different viruses, on how to fight the different diseases, on how to fight poverty, so things will change. And I don't think that is very hard to do this.
Yeah.
I don't think it's very hard.
It'd be a lovely thing if that sort of thing happened.
This crisis we see a lot of good things happening.
Yeah. Oh no, it's I mean, it's amazing. And I think probably we should, at this point, we should just recognise and appreciate everything that's being done, you know, by care workers, frontline staff, and people that never ever came to the fore previously, you know. So everybody that's involved in transport and keeping the supply chain going, working at airports and warehouses, all these people, on top of obviously the obvious ones who are in the healthcare system and supporting. And it's a funny thing, you know, when you grow up as a kid, you always see these comic books and stories and heroes, you know, and heroes always have uniforms or an outfit. And here we are now looking at real heroes who actually still have uniforms and outfits, but they've never featured on any magazines or books or as a kid. And I think that's possibly going to change as well, and change for the good.
Yes. It's about time to start appreciating the contribution of everyone in the society, in an organization, in a country. So, for example, with the healthcare, we've been doing a lot of work with healthcare, human factors, and patient safety the last 3 years. And one of the things that we faced is a lot of disappointment, especially on behalf of the nurses.
Yeah.
But the way that people and possibly colleagues appreciate their contribution to health and their contribution to people. And since we work a little bit with them, we saw how, if you are a patient, you also see this, of course. But we can, everybody can easily see their contribution, but it seems that it was not recognized. Now they recognize, people, all the world recognizes the contribution of doctors, nurses, all the healthcare personnel, and how do they, not only they contribute, but they sacrifice themselves. If you see the percentage of the deaths that they are healthcare people, you realize what their contribution is, you know? So they are possibly the first victims of this pandemic.
Yeah, no.
So yeah, I feel extremely grateful to these people, and not only the healthcare people, but also the people at the supermarkets and other places where they actually work in order to serve the people, and they do it in such a nice way.
Everybody, dustmen, ambulance drivers, fire brigade, the police, military, all the people that are doing things that keep everything moving, they were never even thought of before, you know, and people who assumed heroes were, you know, whether it's footballers, rugby players, cricketers or whatever, they're entertainers and they're lucky and they're part of keeping society going, which is great. But, you know, real heroes are really now coming to the fore and everybody's understanding who they are.
And this is a basic principle in life. If we end up keeping this principle, that we appreciate and respect everybody, whatever they do in society, whatever they offer in society, or in an organization, if we talk about organizational issues, then it will make a huge difference.
Yeah.
We keep doing a lot of teamwork, a lot of leadership, a lot of different other training. But without this principle of respecting everybody and their contribution to the organization, how you can implement anything?
Yeah. No, it's very like I said, you know, sometimes it's almost as if, I don't know, you know, whichever God anybody worships or whatever, it's almost as like whatever the God is, they were looking down and saying, do you know something? You're going a little bit too fast and a little bit too crazy. We need to calm down a little bit and get some good back. And if that manages to happen, then, you know, it's not going to be a bad place. But, you know, unfortunately, it's at a very high price for many. Terrible.
The other thing is getting our priorities right.
Yes.
You know, in life.
Vangelis, sorry, I just want to ask something now about priorities. Now, if you look at the traditional coding in organisations, you've got QHS, S and E. Okay, so, you know, most people know safety and security, and now they know E is a bit of environment, and the Q is quality, health. Okay, do you think there's going to be a lot more prominence now under the health and the safety side with regards to hygiene?
Oh, of course, a lot of things will change. Some of them they are changed for the better standards, and but some of them, unfortunately, they will be there to possibly, like security, where we had to do a lot of, when 9/11 came, we had to do a lot of things that we didn't like. We had to delay things. We had to slow down a lot of the operation. We had to invest a lot in having a lot of people in the security areas. New equipment, a lot of delays of flights. All of this happened because of just one event.
Yeah.
Imagine these kind of events now, how much they will affect the industry. Yes, and not only aviation, the whole world. You know, it will be heavily affected. Even the way we greet people and the way we interact with people. This will change, unfortunately. Sometimes there are good things, and sometimes there are possibly not so pleasant things.
I agree. But I think there'll be huge changes and changes that will come into legislation and should be linked also to, you know, the way countries do business and what they should do as a prerequisite of doing business. A lot more stricter approaches now from whether it's to do with hygiene, whether it's to do with abuse of workers, you know, just constantly trying to go for low cost and different dynamics in different countries. All of that now has to start coming back into some sort of alignment.
Yeah, you're right.
Okay, so now, my friend, I know you do an awful lot of research with Trinity College as well on human factors. Okay, what do you think are going to be the biggest problems when everybody starts to come back online? Because again, I think there's going to be a push-pull I think, organizations are going to have to come back on quickly to get the economy moving again. And in what form of restrictions, who knows? So whether it's 20 to 30-year-olds or people that have already had it and have got a certificate, whatever the dynamic is, they're going to come back on, and then possibly there's going to be another shutdown or a close down again when another wave of it comes until there is a vaccine. So the mentality and the focus of people, how do you think that's going to challenge the normal expectations in very, very safety related environments?
Yeah. I think the different organizations, they will be affected in different ways. But definitely the first thing that people, they will mind is about the job security.
Yeah.
So this is one thing that companies, they need to deal with this as quickly as possible. Decide what they're going to do and ensure that they provide this security to people. Otherwise, it will be very demoralized. We will have a lot of demoralized people, and it will be hard to deal with that. So this is possibly one of the obstacles that need to be addressed. Each organization should start from now to identify obstacles. What will be the obstacles when we start operation? Yes. And deal with those obstacles even from now and start preparing for that. Yes. Instead of waiting for these days to start thinking about that.
Also, I think some of the leadership, the old leadership skills and management skills are going to have to change now, because there'll be so many people working offline and away from the office, and they're still going to have to be managed, motivated, guided, controlled, etc. So there's going to be a different type of training for leaders and managers as well. Huh?
Yeah. I think the management at this times it comes in even more importance. So yes, different skills will be required, and definitely we need to invest a lot in making sure the management are up to standard to deal with the new challenges. So we need to predict what could be these challenges and deal with this with not only with training, but also with preparing our personnel into this. So this preparation needs to start from now.
Yeah, 100%. Now, if I was to be able to ask you, as we're coming to near the end of this now, if I was to ask you, magic wand, what 3 things would you like to be able to influence in the new normal? What would they be?
Well, one thing is the risk and crisis management. The risk and crisis management should be given the right attention. Thinking proactively what could be the day after and what could be the problems is vital to keep the operation going in case of something happens. And this doesn't need to be a crisis. It could be something that is abnormal in the organization. It could be a risk that we didn't expect. So we need to be proactive in dealing with the risk and crisis management. It doesn't require a lot of competencies to do this, but it does require to apply some models, to apply some good thinking, to utilize the different professionals to do this.
Yeah.
So this is, yes, sorry.
No, go on, that's right. Yeah. So that's the first one.
That's the first one. The other thing is to invest in leadership. So I believe what you said before is important. Leadership will make the difference. Yeah? So let's try to identify exactly what will be the new situation for leaders, what are the new competencies, what are the new ways to deal with the people issues on the organization, because leaders are not only managing the resources as a manager, but it's also managing the people. Yes? So this is possibly the second. And the third one is, I believe, is how you involve the people. Involvement of everybody. So try to find ways to get people involved. Involve them in the new situation. Involve them in getting their ideas, in applying the new systems, in helping the development of the organization. So the involvement of people is also key.
Yeah, no, 100%, 100%. Yeah, well, please God, Vangelis, you know, things will start to improve soon. Now, obviously, I was just looking at the news this morning, and you know, it was quite a surprise. But obviously, it's nice to see some good news with Spain, you know, releasing some of the restrictions, especially around the construction industry. Now, lots of countries and governments are talking about an exit plan. You know, what do you feel? What do you feel about that? I mean, obviously, and we both know we're not experts, and we're not trying to suggest that people should or shouldn't do anything that we'd be saying. But you know, just as discussion points, you know, what are your feelings with regards to these, you know, the pressures on exit plans?
Yeah. I think in many cases it will be trial and error.
Yeah.
We cannot really predict exactly how this situation will change. So we need to start in a slow rate, start putting the engines to operation, but we need to be careful in the same way to put some models to predict some things. We cannot be sure that what we do now will be successful or not. No government, no organization will be in a position to predict exactly the outcomes of one move. So we just need to trial and see how it goes.
Yeah, no, exactly. And that's one of the things then with getting experience and learning from it.
Of course, a lot of the countries have managed to deal with the pandemic in a better way than others.
Yeah.
But possibly many of these countries had the experience from other countries, you know? Yes. So it's true that in Italy or other countries, there was a not so, at least at the beginning, not so good way of dealing with the pandemic. But these countries were the first. For example, Italy was the first country in Europe that ended up with this pandemic. So if Greece has done a lot better, for example, maybe they had also the experience of Italy to build on that, you know?
Yeah. Oh no, that's clear. That's clear. And also cultures plays a big part in it, and you know, population and everything else. So I mean, the most important thing is that everybody learns for the better, and please God, collectively, you know, it doesn't keep causing problems. Yeah. Vangelis, as always, my friend, it's a pleasure, and always enjoyed your training sessions. Look forward to attending many more, and thank you so much for your time today. It's greatly appreciated, and your opinions and your points of view.
Thank you very much, Chris, for that.
Thank you so much. All the best.
Bye-bye.